Hey, it's Matt, your average gamer, and this is day 18 of a build a day until they announce DLC. That's right, we're doing a build or build related video every single day until they announce DLC, so be sure to subscribe because this has been fun. It's going to continue to be fun, and we're going to see how far we can go with this. In the meantime, for today, we're doing a Dex Lightning build. So this is going to be a lot similar to some of the bleed builds that you've seen and such, but we're going to be boosting stuff and also using the Ash of War Thunderbolt, and we are using the Scavenger curved swords. The reason we're using them is because they do have the innate bleed on them, they have good damage, and then when we throw lightning on them, it gives them the ability to really frankly be overpowered, as you can see with the chunks of HP coming off there. Once again, we're on New Game Plus 7, Journey 15 or 16 at this point, and we're able to absolutely shred some of the bosses in the game. The concept here works similar as what I was talking about before, in the sense that we are boosting our consecutive attacks, our jump attacks, and all of that damage, while we're also using talismans and the lightning tier to boost our lightning damage as well. And I'm going to show you later in the video, as you're building up generic damage, what you can do with Thunderbolt 2 to include the Ash of War as well, making it an entire Dex Lightning build that's not only a lot of fun to use, but also makes the game a lot easier, and you're going to see later in this video when I shred the fire giant with it how much damage this is truly capable of. And it is capable of a lot. This is a high damage build. It builds off consecutive attacks and the jump attacks, so there is a lot there that you're going to be able to benefit from. And then we're using lightning, which isn't an incredibly resisted type, so we're able to get the damage from that as well. And then obviously, I think I mentioned this already, but we're able to proc bleed maybe once or so because we have the innate bleed on the Scavenger curved swords, which obviously if you're going to use an alternate, you can use the bandit curved swords, but just be aware you won't get the bleed procs because you won't have any innate bleed on them. So where do you get Thunderbolt, the Ash of War I'm using? I'm going to show you where to get it, although the Teardrop Scarab is actually going to be gone already because, yeah, I grabbed it, but then got shot with an arrow and then got eaten by one of the guys that were down there. I actually died doing this. But anyway, going back to it, you want to go to the Avenue Balcony, Site of Grace, head towards where the archer and the other knight that usually stands there and bothers you as you're attempting to move forward with the level, and you're just going to jump off the side early on the left, and there'll be a section down here, and the Teardrop Scarab is somewhere in the middle of this section, and he drops the Ash of War Thunderbolt. And that not only adds lightning to the weapon, but it also allows us to use a very spammable Ash of War in Thunderbolt, which is quite powerful when utilized correctly. And since we're building up a lot of generic damage, we can hit quite hard with it as well. I'm going to show off the Ash of War a little bit here on some mobs. And for the Ash of War here that we're using Thunderbolt, it's one of the most spammable Ashes of War in the entire game, and it's very cost effective too. It doesn't cost a lot of FP in that sense, and you're able to just spam it. You can clear out mobs, you can do decent damage to bosses, and most importantly, once again, this is an Ash of War that basically comes out very quick, does a fair bit of damage, and you can continue to just hit it to clear mobs, hit bosses, and it has a very, very, very easy window to dodge out of as well. And we're going to take on the Fire Giant, who, spoilers here, I guess, is, fairly difficult on max scaling. But on the second try, this is the second try in, we're going to go at it a second time. On the first time, actually, I got him to the second phase, and he did the fire pillars twice in a row, which I didn't expect. I thought he was going to do the thing where the meteors fall or whatever it is, molten rocks or whatever. And yeah, I was close to his leg, and he did the fire pillars a second time, which is actually rare. Didn't expect it, and I ended up getting one shot by him by the massive fire damage it does. But on the second try, we're able to go in with the knowledge that we're mainly going to be using our weapons for this, not as much the Ash of War, because he has a ton of HP. We might be able to hit him for some bleed procs, and the lightning damage on the consecutive attack build-up is going to be a lot. And it is quite impressive. These are really fantastic against the Fire Giant. If you're having trouble with the Fire Giant, this is a method I would honestly say that is well worth trying. If you're able to get your hand on a second Scavenger curved sword, and you're able to put either bleed or lightning on it, you're going to absolutely shred the Fire Giant, simply going for his ankle. Avoiding his physical attacks is actually quite easy once you're used to them, given the fact that yes, they're hard hitting, but they're all relatively slow, and we're able to hit his ankle a lot with the consecutive bonuses, true through his HP, and bring him to his second phase rather quickly. So we're going to go with the knowledge here that we have less weak points to hit, but overall we're still going to build up consecutive attacks and maybe get a bleed proc if we're lucky. First things first though, we go for the hands because they're a weak point. Then we're going to go at the side here, and apparently if you're at the side and not directly behind him by his feet, it's going to trigger different attacks. I hadn't realized that, but this time he did the regular lean down fire part, so yeah, he didn't go into the molten rocks or whatever they're called until now, which is something most of the time that I'm fighting him in a second phase, it's usually like the second thing he does. So I guess if you stand in a certain spot, you're going to trigger different attacks. In the meantime though, we're able to build up a lot of damage on him, get in some consecutive hits, follow him down, and once again, go for the safer areas in his legs to get the jump attacks and the consecutive attack bonuses. And as tricky as he can be, you can see here, he wasn't very difficult at all for me. It wasn't too bad taking him down with this build. The consecutive attacks built up a lot. I know there's a Thunderbolt at the end there that we didn't really use. But yeah, when you're doing this, it's definitely good to go with those consecutive hits. For this, we have the Scavenger Curved Sword plus 25. We have 2 of them. Any seal will do. We have the Jaron, Raptor's Black Feathers, Rotten Wing Sword Insignia, Lightning Scorpion Charm, Shard of Alexander or Millicent's Prosthesis, depending on what you're doing, Claw Talisman, and then we have the Lightning tier, and we have the Faith tier as well for buffs. For stats, this was actually an easy one to do because Lightning scales with Dex. If you're not using any of the Faith Lightning type attacks, everything else that's really put on a weapon is going to scale with Dexterity. So we went for extremely high Dexterity, 50 Vigor, and that's basically everything that you need aside from the 15 or 25 Faith or so to use Golden Vow and Flame Grant Me Strength. Everything else as far as this goes is really up to you. The main stat here is Dexterity. That's going to scale best with our Lightning damage and the damage on the Scavenger Curved Swords, so make sure you get that to at least 60, preferably 80. Now, buffing this is actually quite simple. We're not doing anything crazy here. After we drink the Faith tier, that's going to get us to 25 Faith, and then we're going to cast Golden Vow because it's the longest. We're going to use Flame Grant Me Strength, which is only 30 seconds, but it's still going to help us out as far as damage goes. And then we're going to get in our jump attacks, hit as many times as we can, or use the Ash of War Thunderbolt, depending on what your style is in this method. And those are the main concepts there. And we're going to show off Thunderbolt a little bit more here, what you can do with it with bosses. If you're going to use the Shard of Alexander or go more for the Lightning setup, or if you're going to go for consecutive attacks, it's really up to you. Depends on your style of play. I showed the setup that leans more towards consecutive attacks with using Thunderbolt as a little bit of a bonus. But if you want to use Thunderbolt as your main build, especially for field bosses and such, it actually does pretty good damage. It can be used at a distance. You can spam it very quickly. And once again, as I mentioned earlier in the video, it's very easy to dodge out of this too because it's such a quick animation. And he went down fairly quickly. And I wanted to say, by the way, happy Valentine's Day to everybody because it is Valentine's Day. I hope everybody has a fantastic one. It's been really fun creating these builds. And I'm going to continue trying to create the most that I possibly can and see how far we can go with this. I'm hoping they announce DLC later this month or sometime in March, the latest. But in the meantime, we're going to see how far we can go with this, how many builds we can create, how much versatility we can show in a game like Elden Ring, which is incredibly versatile. It really is. There's so many builds you can create. I have a list already of like 40 or 50 to do. It's been pretty fantastic so far. If you love overpowered PvE builds, definitely check out all the awesome builds on my channel. Thanks for watching, everybody, and I will catch you guys there.